going to call us to order. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Salem Keizer School Board at the Support Services Center, Room 2, 2575 Commercial Street Southeast, Salem, Oregon. It is December 13th at 6 p.m. First thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please join me in? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary, can you call the roll?
Nancy McNorris-Audix.
Here.
Paul Kylo.
Present.
Chris Brantley.
Here.
Marty Han.
Here.
Jim Green.
Here.
Rick Kimball.
Here.
Chuck Lee.
Here.
So there are agenda modifications. The board received an updated board plate, revised reading 5A, property realignments with the city of Salem, that was at your desk. Next on the agenda is audience communication on agenda items.
Spotlight.
Oh, I jumped over the spotlight. Oh, my goodness. What was I thinking? We will not go to audience communication. We will do the spotlight on success.
Good evening, and our first spotlight will be presented by Karina Lee, the Executive Director of Salem Keizer Education Foundation.
It is my honor once again to acknowledge the Volunteer of the Month, and could we please have Andrew Duncan come up to the front? Andrew, come over. And is Jay or Lisa here? There's Jay, good. Okay, come on, you're all gonna come over?
It's a family
Okay,
affair.
it's a family affair. Okay, we like family affairs. This is great. Thank you so much. Our Volunteer of the Month is Andrew Duncan. Andrew was nominated by the Roberts Structured Learning Center staff. As a college graduate, Andrew felt strongly about giving back in the community and wanted to be part of an alternative school. The Roberts Structured Learning Center staff jumped at the opportunity to have him work with their students. Andrew started volunteering at Roberts 3 years ago in their math classroom. He came to them through the College Mentor Program as part of the High School Graduation Initiative grant. That's awesome. Andrew proved to be adaptable to all types of learners and is engaging and humble in his work with the students. Andrew is a highly reliable volunteer who uses his lunch break from work to tutor in the Algebra 1 class. If he misses his regular volunteer shift at SLC due to his day job, he makes up for it another day. Andrew also volunteers at Hillcrest Correctional Facility. Assistant Principal Lisa McIntyre noted that Andrew certainly does not give of his time to receive praise or accolades, but simply wants to connect with students using math and being a positive role model for all students. Roberts SLC staff are forever grateful to Mr. Duncan for his continued support and dedication to the Roberts community. Congratulations.
Our next spotlight will be presented by Matt Biondi, the Director of Middle Schools.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to invite Lisbeth Mayoral to come up, and I don't know if maybe her family as well. They are certainly welcome to come, as well as Mrs. Tricia Nelson and Joe Valencia. Tricia is the principal at Waldo Middle School, and Joe is the assistant principal. Excellent. Fantastic. We'd like to, Elizabeth Mayoral is in 7th grade at Waldo Middle School. She is passionate about school, is in the AVID program, likes track and field, and wants to be a lawyer and a successful businesswoman. Elizabeth's father owns a small grocery store on Portland Road where Elizabeth is known with affection and appreciation by the customers. She loves giving great customer service to people coming into the store. On November 3rd, at the Center 50 Plus on Portland Road, Elizabeth was presented with a certificate of appreciation for her assistance to the city of Salem by Mayor Anna Peterson on behalf of the Salem City Council and the North Gateway Renewal Advisory Board. Her father recently allowed the City of Salem staff to go into his store to conduct a survey with his customers with regard to the Salem Community Food Study. City staff left a few copies of the survey for distribution to customers, hoping to get more feedback. Elizabeth took the initiative to distribute the surveys to customers and other residents. She quickly ran out of surveys and made additional copies. The surveys were given primarily to Spanish-speaking residents, the city's target audience. Because of Elizabeth's connection with her community and her efforts, the city reached many more residents than in past survey attempts in the North Salem-Portland Road corridor. Elizabeth's recognition of her community service by the mayor is most noteworthy, and we honor her for her contribution and service to our community. Congratulations.
All right, our next spotlight will be presented by Jay Remy, our Director of Community Relations and Communication.
Thank you, Superintendent Perry, Chair McMorris Audix, and members of the board. If we could have Liberty Elementary Principal Lizzie Aguilar-Nelson come up with the people from Trinity Covenant Church. We have Pastor Mark Yelmervik, Daniel Porth, Margaret Porth, and Cliff Herman. And our community partner of the month is Trinity Covenant Church. Liberty Elementary staff nominated our community partner of the month because since at least 2002, Trinity Covenant Church has sponsored Liberty's Heart program, which is an acronym that stands for Help Encourage a Reader Today. Coordinated by Margaret Porth, a group of 5 to 6 volunteers appear at Liberty each Monday through Thursday to read with a first and second grader who just need a little more encouragement. In operation for over 20 years, Trinity Community Corner, under the direction of Cliff Herman, provides a free after-school program that serves between 30 to 50 Liberty students daily. Students have a safe, supervised place to go after school. Trinity is one of Liberty's main partners for our holiday giving tree. Trinity has continued to make sure no student at Liberty or their sibling goes without a gift for the holiday. Daniel Porth, Cliff Herman, and Matthew Humphreys met with school staff to brainstorm on other ways the church could support the school. The result of that meeting had a group of approximately 30 church volunteers participate in Liberty Elementary Beautification Day. The volunteers were divided into 3 groups. Some volunteered to paint the South Hall, some worked on cleaning up the school grounds, and the third group prepared care bags for all staff. All the volunteers worked hard, laughed hard, and had a good time. That's great. Liberty students, staff, and principal would like to thank Trinity Covenant Church for being an amazing partner and for all the support they continue to provide to the Liberty Elementary community. Congratulations as our community partner of the month. Thank you.
And our last spotlight will be presented by Jay Remy, Director of Community Relations and Communication.
Okay, thank you once again. And if Judson Principal Alicia Kruska could come forward, along with Daisha Johnson. Thank you. So our business partner of the month is Johnson Family Orthodontics. Dr. Cole couldn't be here tonight, but his wife, Daisha Johnson, is here. The December business partner is Johnson Family Orthodontics, nominated by Judson Middle School staff. Dr. Cole Johnson and his wife, Daisha, have been a huge support to the students and the staff at Judson. Music programs rely on donations to help fund the programs, and the Johnsons understand this need. They took up a collection at their orthodontics office and presented a very generous gift to the Judson Choral Program. They have also inspired others to donate by speaking at Judson's choir concert and encouraging others to support the school. In addition, they have provided Judson staff with a delicious luncheon catered by Wild Pear, contributed money towards Judson's electronic reader board fund, and have volunteered and supported Judson in many other ways. Since opening the practice in 2011, Dr. Cole and his team at Johnson Family Orthodontics have committed themselves to the Salem community. They hold fundraisers, make donations, sponsor sports teams, host an annual free back-to-school carnival at Riverfront Park, and recognize one teacher each month with an award to their class and to their school. The Judson Middle School community wants the Johnson Family Orthodontics team to know they very much appreciate their continued support to the school and to the community. So congratulations, and thank you for being our business partner of the month.
Okay. Now, we are really on audience communication. To start out the audience communication, I'm going to invite Tass Morrison forward. She is our candidate for OSBA board, and the board was told she would be here, and given the opportunity for Tass to say a few words if she wanted, and for us to ask her questions.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman McMorris-Oddix, board members, Superintendent Perry. I'm delighted to be here tonight. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am Tass Morrison. I'm running for position number 11 on the OSBA Board of Directors, which serves your district, Salem Keizer, as well as the 9 other school districts in Marion County. And I have a partner that serves the all the Marion County school districts. Kay Jones from Jefferson School District is also representing school districts in Marion County. I'm here tonight to request that you vote for me at your meeting tonight. I'm on the North Santiam School District Board of Directors, and I've served on that board since 2006. This is my 5th year, beginning in January, on the OSBA Board of Directors, and I have been elected to serve as Vice President of the board beginning next month. I'm a very strong believer in our public schools, that we deliver the best services for all students, better than any other system, and our local citizens can make the very best decisions about the community's schooling. OSBA is well positioned to assist ensuring that school boards are well informed in order to govern and make the best decisions for their students, their families, and their taxpayers. OSBA is also Oregon's strongest advocate for public schools and local school boards, and I certainly appreciate the role that Chris Brantley plays as an advocate serving on the Legislative Policy Committee for OSBA. And do you serve too, Nancy?
Not this year.
No, okay, you have in the past, so thank you for your past service. I appreciate that. And I also want to acknowledge that the OSBA board recently selected your board member, Jim Green, to serve as our next executive director, and we are very pleased. The OSBA staff is also very pleased that we made that decision. Congratulations, Jim. So how can I best represent you and your 40,000 plus students and your 65 schools? Are there some priorities that OSBA can bring to the table on your behalf, on your students' behalf? What information could you share with me, or questions that you may have for me now that I'm here?
Anyone? I would just like to say that I've really appreciated Tass has done a really nice job of summarizing board meetings and giving us information so that we have a good sense of what is going on with the OSBA. And we have on our agenda the resolution adopting the legislative priorities, which really I think that conversation will inform a lot about where this board is on the priorities that have been set by the.
Okay, good. And I hope you've all feel that you've been given many opportunities to provide input on those legislative policies. And if you haven't, I want to know about that as well.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much
again
for
for
coming.
inviting me. You bet.
So, on agenda items, speaking, I'm going to give the first 3 names, and then I will continue so that people know who's coming up next. So the first 3 people to come up, you don't come up as a group, come up one at a time, but you'll be prepared to come up. Ana Olivia Palazzo, Christina Marquez, and Zoe Diacon.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I had a situation and I couldn't print, so I'm reading off my phone, which is fun. Okay, greetings, Chair McMorris-Adix and Superintendent Perry and members of the school board. I had a doctor's appointment this morning, and he and I chatted about my work. As I told him the current situation with our community living in fear since the election, he exclaimed, "You have no idea," and he told me some concerns he's especially worried about with his patients. Later, I had an appointment with President Thorset at Willamette University, and he related that they're putting together some plans to support all of their DACA students. Those are the deferred action young adults that were brought here when they were very young. And in every way they can to keep them in school no matter what, even if they lose their funding. And he's also very worried about their families and the families of the Willamette Academy students, our high school students from our high schools in Salem here. If something happens to the families of them, most of them are American-born, all of them, I think, and if something happens to their families, what's going to happen to these promising young people? And so we talked about collaborating and keeping everyone informed to be able to help as much as we can. We've seen support from Mayor Peterson, from Chief Jerry Moore, from the City Council, Superintendent Perry, tired. Perry collaborated with us to send a message of support to, in a personal letter we wrote to 4,000 families, Latino families that we've worked with over the years. And a number of institutions are still working on their message, but now we're asking the school board, the second largest in the state of Oregon, you have an opportunity to show your commitment next to the safety, security, and the health of our students from immigrant families and all other families of color. We applaud Superintendent Perry for pulling together the various school policies and procedures and practices that keep our students safe into one board policy that makes a significant public statement about safety, equity, and inclusion. Now it's time to hear from our board by wholeheartedly adopting this new safe and welcoming schools policy and showing your commitment publicly to resolve and to ensure that our district and all its employees, students, and families will receive a clear, explicit, unified, and enforceable message of safety and welcoming and free of harassment, bullying, menacing, threatening, hazing, and any other type of behavior that really hurts. And I think that's the end of my statement. I can't read anymore on my phone. But thank you guys very much. And I just ask for your support on this new policy. I had a couple of words that I didn't see the final draft to see if they were included. There was the statement that said the bullying, harassment, menacing, and another list, and we needed to include immigrant status and language status. So if you are, it says people of color, LGBTQ, religion, I can't remember the whole list, but add the words and immigrant status and language. So that was it. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Christina? I forgot to warn folks that you have a 3-minute time limit, and please state your name and your address for the record.
Okay.
And Mr. DeCopolis is keeping time, so when you hear that timer, that means your 3 minutes is up.
We have these little tiny lights, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yellow
that one.
light flashes, you have 1 minute.
They're sometimes hard to see, but there they are.
Good evening, Superintendent and members of the board. My name is Cristina Marquez. I live in Northeast Salem, 4882 Oak Park. And I'm here representing Causa, Oregon's Immigrants' Rights Organization. We're based here in Salem, but we have a statewide impact. We work at the state and national level to advance issues that affect immigrant communities and the daily lives of immigrant communities. We recognize that access to quality education advances our immigrant community, so it's a really important topic for us. I'm also here with a different hat as a proud graduate of McKay High School. Yay! And as an older sister to students currently at McKay High School and Waldo Middle School. I'm the child of immigrants and the first in my family to graduate from college. And I owe a large part of my success to teachers who created a good learning environment for me, providing resources and skills to be a contributing member of society. Today, many former teachers and parents and students and members of our community are here because our values of diversity are being threatened at a time filled with a lot of intolerance and hate. At Causa, we felt the rise in fear in our communities. In the last couple of weeks, we've received calls from parents who are in fear of their children's safety, given the rise in bullying, harassment, and discrimination. We must refuse to tolerate racism, discrimination, and harassment. And we ask you, members of the board, to address these issues at a systemic level, to enact policy to ensure students are given the opportunity to perform at their full potential. Many in the people in the community are committed to upholding values of dignity and respect. We're looking forward as Causa to joining you and creating real solutions. We asked the Salem Keizer School Board to place procedures that address bullying, prejudice, to limit ICE's engagement in the school district, and thus protect the emotional and physical safety of all our students. Having worked with the Portland Public School Board, Causa would be happy to provide any resources and help create those strong policies that foster a welcoming and safe learning environment for all our students. Thank you again for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Next up is Zoe, and then Douglas Dorman, and then Tana Garcia.
And I understand we're supposed to give copies. Good evening. My name is Zoe Diaku, and I live at 917 13th Street Southeast here in Salem in Nancy's district. And I've been an educator in the district for 20 years now, and I'm very happy that our current superintendent has been actively working with our community advocacy groups, such as the Coalition for Equality, Causa, Rainbow Youth, the Islamic Center, NAACP, and so forth, to ensure that the Salem Keizer schools are truly a safe and welcoming place. Knowing this partnership is happening goes a long way towards making me feel more supported as an educator. So thank you, Christy, and thank you, board, for that. The Salem Keizer School District vision, as we know, is that all students graduate and are prepared for a successful life. What we've seen in the months leading up to and these weeks after the election makes this vision more pressing than ever, especially for the undocumented, Muslim, and transgender communities, which have been particularly under threat during this election cycle. Our vision must include all 40,000 plus students in our school district. The district website states that the Salem Keizer Public Schools is committed to providing an environment where students can study and so forth, an environment free of harassment and so forth. So how do we move beyond those empty statements or make sure that they aren't empty statements, and implement concrete actions that protect all Salem Keizer students, especially those members of our community who have been targets of discrimination during a hate-filled and anxiety-inducing election cycle. I ask that our board tell our community several things. Firstly, that you understand the fear which many of our students and staff and other community members live with daily. That you recognize the heightened sense of urgency that many of us feel about the need for these policies and trainings regarding institutional racism and harassment of any kind. And that you pass a resolution to recommit to Plyler v. Doe within our school district, which will clearly convey to the school staff and to parents that the district remains committed to providing an education to all students, regardless of immigration status, so that parents are reassured that they will not face any barriers in enrolling their children in school. And that you express public support for DACA students and their families. And some of us may ask why. It is imperative that despite the controversies around immigration or other related issues, that our educational institution remains focused on the education of all our students. Undocumented students and their families live among us, contribute to our community, participate in the academic and social life of Salem Keizer schools and beyond. We are responsible for the safety, healthy development, intellectual freedom of these students, as well as for their safety from threats of violence, family separation, and deportation. I also wish to request more support and opportunities for self-reflection among staff members. One of the first rules when engaging in equity and social justice work is that we must start with ourselves. In order to do this work honestly and with integrity, we as educators must be willing to engage in reflective self-examination. This not only allows us to know where we currently stand in our cultural competency, but informs us of what we need to do to strengthen that competency. Many of our biases are unconscious, but they influence our thoughts, actions, and interactions. As we do this work, it will be expected that we make mistakes. Lots of mistakes, such as marginalizing other people's experiences, not speaking up when we need to, and expecting those from oppressed groups to educate us, just to name 3. But it is essential that we not waver from doing this work. Our students depend on us. There's a quote I recently heard, "Always keep your hands on the right things." For us educators, this means that we always work with the best interests of students in mind. In other words, it is truly all about the students. And students need, want, and deserve adults who move beyond being nervous educators to becoming courageous educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas is next, then Tana, then Lisa Shreve.
Hi, good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Perry, Chairperson. My name is Douglas Dorman. I live at 3747 Southeast 11th Avenue in Portland, Oregon, 97202. I am a teacher at McKay High School. I've taught in the district. This is my 2nd year. I'm here to talk about safe and welcoming schools. After the election, one of my students, who's my teacher's assistant, came into my classroom, and in his previous class, he was being handed an award for applying to a bunch of scholarships. And they were handing him the award in front of the class, and they were saying, he has such a bright future, he could go to school anywhere. And a student in front of the whole class said, not for long. None of the adults in the room said anything. So when we talk about bullying, it's not the bully that's the problem, it's the silence that condones the bullying. So in this atmosphere of racism, anti-immigration sentiment, homophobia, ableism, xenophobia, all these other feelings rising up in this political climate, it's really crucial that silence is not the leading policy. People are looking for leadership. People are looking for very clear messages that say, no, that's not okay. That's not who we are. That's not what we do. When the student said this to me, I got really nervous. I wanted to say something. And then I immediately caught myself right before I started speaking because we received an email saying, have these conversations with your students, but you have to remain neutral. And I think it was really well-intentioned, the email, but it made me question myself to the point at which the opportunity was gone. I couldn't console the student. I had nothing to say to him. It was a silencing effect on me. So then my silence further condoned it. I didn't have any answers for the student. So I know the district is reticent to give an explicit message because Salem has a mixed community. There's people with different beliefs that are passionately held. But if the district doesn't have a clear communication, that's a silencing effect which condones lateral violence, discrimination, prejudice, ultimately bullying. What we're asking the district to do is to send a very clear communication on all the channels that it can, in print, local television, radio, school assemblies, whatever means it can, not to say we are now coming out as a political organization with an agenda. Superintendent Perry already showed us some of the policies that the district has in place, but people don't know where those policies are. They don't know what they are. So number one, we're asking the district, am I out of time?
You are.
Thank you so much.
Next is Tana, then Lisa, then Delfino.
So my name is Tana Garcia. I live on 1814 Ptarmigan Street Northwest, Salem, Oregon. And I would like to speak on the topic of safe and welcoming schools. I'm speaking to you today both as a teacher and as a parent of children in this district. I have seen the draft for the new board policy for safe and welcoming schools. I appreciate the effort that went into drafting this and feel it is a solid foundational document that can be used by our leadership. I would also like to advocate that we do more. I am asking for a clear and comprehensible statement summarizing the key points from the policy to be openly published on our district website and sent out to all our families. Here is why. In response to the recent presidential election, there have been incidents within our schools of bullying and harassment due to identity and race. Many of our students live in fear that they or their family members will be deported. It is reasonable to expect this will only get worse as our president-elect takes office. Many of our students feel emboldened, and unless we intervene ahead of time, an increasing number will look at their peers with suspicion because of their skin color, religion, ethnicity, and identity. Make no mistake, it is already happening. They are thinking, are you one of us? Do you belong? And on the flip side, our diverse students are thinking, am I welcome? Am I safe? Do I belong? This kind of thinking leads to division within our community and schools, which then creates a hostile learning environment. And we all know that students must feel welcome and safe in order to learn. I do not believe I am being dramatic in my perceptions. I have taught at Sprague and now teach at McKay. My husband teaches at McNary. My son is a recent graduate from West High School, and my daughter goes to school at McKay. She has close friendships with students at West, South, and McKay. She tells me her peers are frightened of racist comments being made and incidents of bullying. In my own classroom, students are joking about being deported. Why are they joking? Well, undoubtedly to cover their fears. Students at McKay feel empowered to speak up about these things because our population is so diverse. But what about students at West or at Sprague, where our diverse students are the minority? If we just look at ethnicity and race, approximately half of our students, 48%, are students of color. Will we make it clear that we are willing to brook criticism and stand by them? Does their safety matter as much as the complaints that will undoubtedly be expressed by some families with more influence who don't really understand the situations these students face? I recognize that we will be underscoring policies already in place. However, as a parent and as a teacher, when those who are under my care are frightened, I don't just say to them, you know I'll protect you and take care of you. I've told you a million times. No, I clarify what I will do and why they are safe. If we take the easy path, which is to ignore the fears and voices of our diverse students when incidents happen, then we are also culpable. Some will argue that a statement like the one I am asking for may result in greater division and increased victimization of our diverse students. I disagree with this. These fears are real and these incidents are happening. Students and their families who already feel marginalized often don't feel empowered to make an issue of these incidents. We must send a clear message to everyone that these behaviors are unacceptable and will not be tolerated. For these reasons, I implore you to write a clear and direct statement in support of all of our students to be posted on our website and sent to our families. Diversity is one of our district's strengths, and we must create an inclusive, unified school district where all are able to graduate and lead successful lives. Thank you.
Lisa, then Delfino, then Patricia. I think it's Leon.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Shreve, and I live at 20775 Walnut Street Northeast in Aurora, Oregon. I am really, really proud to be in my 15th year of teaching at McKay High School. I'm speaking to you this evening because I love my school, I love my students, and I love their families. They are in crisis. Our daily teaching and learning had become even more of a lifeline and is a connection to normalcy in a climate that has become increasingly hostile towards our marginalized communities. Our students and their families are resilient, but have become fearful for their safety and belonging and are even more cautious about how to interact with traditional institutions of authority, like our schools and our district. Just today, I learned that one of our students, who was born here and is a legal resident, stopped coming to school. His mother was not born here. His brother graduated from McKay just last year. He is a great kid who is on track to graduate this year with good prospects. He stopped coming to school shortly after November 8th because of something that somebody said, and he's scared for his family. I wrote, I imagine this young man represents so many more students in our district, but I know he represents so many more students in our district. What can we, as a district, do to help him and his family feel safe and valued? How do we get him back into our building so he can continue to learn and build a better future for his family? We can start by recognizing our own privilege and how we might use that to tell ourselves that everything is fine, that we're nervous about public declarations of support because we don't want to make the existing power structure uncomfortable. It's time for our district to reinforce its existing stated values in a way that is accessible to every member of our community. We pat ourselves on the back for celebrating diversity, but are we really supporting diversity? Thank you for your time and attention.
Delfino. I think it's Delfino Janville. Patricia Leon. So the next three up, Samantha Hughes, Sarah Mannon, Javier Quiroz.
Hello, my name is Samantha Hughes. I live at 2427 Wayside Terrace in Northeast Salem, and I am a former Salem Keizer School District student and a current employee. I'm here today to implore you to put forth a public statement that supports all of our marginalized students, including, but not limited to, persons of color, disabled students, LGBTQIA students, and students with disabilities. In the 2 weeks following the election, there were over 600 acts of hatred in our country and over 33 in Oregon, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. A significant portion of these acts of hatred occurred in our schools. These acts of hatred create an environment of fear where students have to focus on their safety instead of their education. I'm asking for a public statement to be issued that states that the Salem Keizer School District will do everything in its power to protect the children and teens who attend school here, and that any acts of hatred that do occur will be dealt with swiftly and justly. I am a firm believer that silence is violence and that the simple act of speaking up is invaluable. I also want this statement to declare that the superintendent will have to be notified of any ICE officials who wish to enter school property so the district can and will provide adequate support to students and staff. This is particularly important because we have several schools in the district with a minority majority, and many schools and many students fear risk of deportation. We must protect these students. Thank you for taking the time to consider my request.
Sarah, then Javier, then Yadira Juarez.
Good evening, Chairperson, Superintendent, and Board, and the public. My name is Sarah Ferguson Magnon, and I live at 1215 Reedy Drive, Northeast Salem. I've been a teacher in Salem Keizer schools for over 20 years. My children attend Salem Keizer. My daughter will graduate from North this year. I am not here in my official capacity as a teacher or even as a parent. I'm here as a human being speaking to you from the heart, and I would like to share with you some stories of our newest and most vulnerable students in the district who do not have a voice yet in English to tell their stories. I serve students from all over the world, all newcomers to English. I have students from Central America who crawled through miles of sewer pipes to get here, who arrived with infections under their nails and in their teeth and their eyes. I have students newly arrived from Aleppo who came with nothing but the clothes on their back, who haven't attended a school for over 5 years because they've been pushed from refugee camp to refugee camp. I have other students born in refugee camps who have never seen their country of origin, who have never attended school. I have students from Mexico who came as emancipated youth in lawnmower bags in order to cross the border, who ended up in a pickup truck in the wrong state and never met up with their families. These students are not likely to be the ones to stand here, but they're the ones we're standing here for. I'm asking that you take into consideration these most vulnerable students and come out with a strong statement to show that you stand with them. Other institutions, public and private, including OSU, PSU, Reed College, Portland Public, the city of Corvallis, have already stood up and made a formal statement of sanctuary. Our students, even though they don't speak English, understand this statement. I had a student today show me her Facebook in Arabic about the statement that was made in Corvallis and asked me, did I know about a town called Corvallis where they made this statement? And we went through 3 layers of Google Translate to figure out what she was talking about. I recently visited the home of one of our new families from Aleppo and offered, what can I do for you? What else do you need to be welcomed into our community and know that you're safe? And the father told me he wanted 3 things, the simple things that any parent would ask for. First, he wanted a proper coffee pot so he could serve Arabic coffee. Second, he wanted help connecting the internet for his kids so they could get on Facebook and see if their friends still in Syria were alive. And third, he wanted seeds, just some seeds to plant a winter crop in his backyard of a little 3x5 raised bed. He wanted some cilantro, some garlic, a couple potato starters, because he's planting seeds in our community. He didn't ask for anything else. His kids don't even have a winter coat. They didn't have a single book in the home. The kids stood so that I could sit to converse with him, but that's all he asked for. So that's all I'm asking from you as a human being, to make a strong stand on their behalf. Thank you very much.
Javier, then Yadira, then Lucia.
Good evening, Superintendent Perry, members of the board, and community members. My name is Javier Quiroz, Program Director of this Educa Inspire of the Salem Keizer Coalition for Equality. I am also a very proud parent of 5 grown children who attend public schools here in Salem. Grandfather of 7 who also attend school here in Salem. Since Trump pronounced his candidacy for the president, our community started to be worried about what is going to happen to our families and children. And now he was elected, and the community is even more worried. Since the elections, we have heard stories from students and families that young Latinos have been provoked by white community. Latinos have been hearing racist comments, such as wetbacks, go back where you belong, we don't want you here, things like that. I was encouraged to hear the message that Christy Perry shared with her parents, the community, and of the school district, to making students and families feel safe, welcome, and included. I strongly encourage the superintendent and the school board to ensure that these policies are implemented for the safety of our students and community, especially for the Latino community. For this, I want to thank you, and I want to applaud you on behalf of the Latino community for our continued collaboration between the school district and the Salem Keizer Coalition for Equality. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Yadira, then Lucia, then Fatima.
Hi, good evening, Superintendent Christine Perry, members of the school board, and community members. My name is Yadira Juarez. I have 3 children, all in the Salem Keizer School District. One is 16 years old, one is 14 years old, and one is 7 years old. When I realized the racism that my son had to experience, I had a lot of feelings. I felt frustration, worry, sadness, and anger. One day after the election, my son and a friend were walking to the bus when a car with a Confederate flag drove up beside them and shouted them, "Go back to your country." Went back. What do you do when you can't protect your own son? I worry with the recent election of Trump that more people will feel like they can be openly racist. I'm glad that Superintendent Christy Perry has compiled the Safe and Welcoming Schools new board policy. Thank you to Superintendent Christy Perry for the message of inclusion and commitment to help our community that she shared in the letter to parents. Thank you to the board members and the superintendent for listening to my story.
Lucia, then Fatima, then Angel.
Buenas tardes, superintendente y miembros de la mesa directiva. Mi nombre es Lucía Sánchez. Como madre estoy frustrada y preocupada. Mi niño viene diciéndome que un compañerito blanco con el que realiza diferentes actividades, el niño blanco con actitudes y palabras groseras le hace saber que él como niño latino, haga lo que haga, nunca va a ser mejor que los güeros. Mi niño no quiere decir a los maestros porque piensa que le van a dar prioridad a lo que el niño blanco piensa. Y esto tomó más fuerza después de las elecciones. Mi pregunta para ustedes: ¿cuál es el proceso de que los directores, junto con su personal, toman para responder a una situación de racismo contra nuestros niños latinos?
Good evening, Superintendent.
My name is Lucia Sanchez, and I'm a mother that is very frustrated and worried. My son has been telling me about a peer about a peer that has been to where they do different activities in the classroom, and he's a Caucasian, and he's been acting up by saying bad words and making him feel like he doesn't belong and that he's never going to be better than him. My student has never wanting to tell the teachers about what's been happening with this other student, because he's afraid that that the other student would have priority over him just because he's Caucasian. Now, these incidents have been happening even more after the elections. Now, my question is for you, what is the process for the principals and the teachers that are taking place to come up with solutions towards these kind of racist situations towards our Latino kids?
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Christy Perry. My name is Fatima Abba Nelson. I teach at McKay High School, and I live here in Salem, 1005 Church Street, Northeast 97031. I am not prepared to speak tonight. That was not my plan. My plan was to just come and find out what the school board was going to say about this situation. I have been part of a wonderful group of McKay High School teachers who decided that we needed to do something. We are all grieving about our students. We are all dealing with a daily situation where we are seeing all this, the work we are doing with our kids, and the hope, the empowerment that they have been receiving for the past couple of years, the Oregon Promise, DACA, the scholarships, LINK program, everything that our school is doing to encourage and empower students to go to college and become better community members in our city, beautiful Salem city. I'm seeing everything becoming at risk of deteriorating and very, very fast. This afternoon, I had a couple of something that I've never shared with my McKay High School teachers, the fact that I could speak and read and write Arabic very, fluently. I've always kept my identity to myself. I don't wear the veil. I will tell you exactly why I'm wearing it tonight. And I met a couple of Syrian kids that I felt needed somebody to translate for them. I couldn't just sit there at the cafeteria and watch them not eat because they were afraid that the food had pork in it. And I knew it immediately. It's my culture. I know it. I went to them and I talked to them, and I found out that they were not eating because they were scared. And then I said I needed to get involved. It was just about the food. Then little by little things started getting more complicated, and I felt that they needed more things. Their families needed more support and understanding. And I realized that with November 8th and what happened, that the fear, the anxiety that the families are going through, it's just tremendous. And I'm someone that has always dealt with the issue of Islamic culture, Arabic culture, and I always kept myself, because my mom was a single mom in Arabic country, and she always told me, stay focused on your math and sciences. That's how you're gonna make it. That's how you're gonna save us, help us. And I have always done that. Even when I came to Oregon State and I majored in engineering, and I became a McKay High School teacher, it was always about academic. The best way for me to help my students was to always focus on helping them get the standards they need, because that's how they're going to solve all those issues of religion and fear and discrimination and color and racism. It's all going to disappear if they can just focus and succeed. Naive, I know. Then this afternoon, in I tutor a couple of Syrian kids in mathematics. I translate to them in Arabic, but I, at the same time, is in English, so they can learn it. And In'am is a wonderful kid in our school. She is in the honors classes, in the AP program, and she is simply fascinating. Unfortunately, I did not talk to her for a couple of years because I was that kind of teacher who teaches everybody. Just because In'am is wearing a veil, I'm not gonna approach her if she doesn't approach me. What a mistake. In'am starts coming to my classroom so she can give a ride to the kids, the Syrian kids, after tutoring. And she just burst into tears and she told me, could I call you Khalti Fatima, which means Aunt Fatima. And I said, sweetie, what's going on? She told me, I want to go to the school board, but I have an AP exam tomorrow. And I need to talk. These Syrians are going through so much. And I felt like a coward. I stared at her and I said, well, I am going to the school board, but I am not going to speak. She told me, I wish I could go and talk because they need so much help and they are scared. They think they are all going back to Turkey, to the refugee camps, because they cannot go back to Syria. And I said, I need to speak. I need to say something. And it's not just about the Islamic kids, about my Hispanic kids, about my African kids, about all of them. We are all grieving, and I am a mess. And that's why I didn't want to speak tonight, honestly, because I know I would just burst into tears. And that's why I just focus on math and science. It's this, my safe zone. But I'm looking up to you so you can provide that safe zone for everybody, because they need it. Our kids need the safe zone. I'm looking up to you for guys. Thank you.
Angel?
Hi, my name is Angel. I live in 4485 Janice Avenue. Me and my brothers, I have to go pick up my brothers like every day to school. And these, like, I take my dog with me, and this 22-year-old lady like started saying stuff to me because because I was with my friends, and she's just like she thought I was like hurting my dog and all of that stuff, and I wasn't doing nothing to my dog, only because my dog was trying like to bite the other kids, and I like just grabbed her so she wouldn't she wouldn't do nothing. And like the lady started like screaming at me. I was with my friends, with my little brothers. We were all scared, and we tried to walk like the other way to my house, and then like they were waiting for us right there, and then we tried to go the other way, and like there were two ladies, so one was on one side and the other one was on the other, and they were waiting for us there. And then we went back to the school where my brothers go. We talked with the counselor. My dad went to the school. We talked with the counselor. My dad went to the school to pick us up because, like, we didn't get to our house, like, at 3:40, 3:50 because, like, we were so scared. My friend's little sister started crying. My little brother almost started crying, too. And we were all really scared. And my dad went to pick us up. The counselor had to walk my friends and their brothers all the way to their aunt's house because they were all really scared. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. John Christensen.
Hi, for the record, my name is John Christensen. I live in the SCAN neighborhood and also the zone of the chairperson, and I'm also on the SCAN board. I can say modestly, I'm also a founder of Howard Street Charter School. Hi, Paul, and a few others. I'd like to say, if I can please, that white people are grieving too. And I've worked in interrelations with African American people, persons of color, my entire life. My family's in grief. My children are in grief at some of the sadness and what's taking place. Tomorrow night, our SCAN board, SCAN is the neighborhood that embraces McKinley, Howard Street, South Salem High School, and has for 50 years, or 44 years. We've existed for 44 years. We're going to have a discussion with the staff on the Human Relations Commission with regard to the commission and also our city. What we've become aware of is that the number of complaints that have filed to the Human Relations Commission has doubled since the election. I would recommend that you consider or continue an active dialogue with the city, with the Human Relations Committee. Also, that maybe the communications that you make would also be extended to the parent-teacher clubs or groups. I do attend those at McKinley. And also possibly at your consideration to the neighborhood associations. I'm in a lot of grief about this. Thank you. I'm sorry for being upset.
Thank you. It's a never-ending list. Leonardo Reyes.
Hello, my name is Leonardo Reyes. I live at 5437 Nicole Court, Southeast Salem. I'm a graduate of McKay High School. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who has spoken today on behalf of undocumented youth who typically go as the voiceless community, the community that kind of stays in the shadow because it is a very uncomfortable topic to talk about. I am a DACA recipient. I graduated from McKay as an undocumented student. I went to Chemeketa Community College and I graduated in 2011. Then I went to Western after that. I wasn't planning on speaking today. I mostly wanted to listen in to see what people had to say, to see what the faculty had to say on this subject. I think you are in a very difficult position because it is difficult to take sides on this matter because it is so politically ingrained at this point that if it might feel that if you do take sides that you might be taking political sides. I would urge you to not think about this as a political issue as much as a people issue, an issue surrounding students who are in your communities, whether we go recognize or unrecognize. We are here. There is a real fear as to what potentially could happen in the future for many of us and our community members, not just for me as an individual, but also for students in your community who have undocumented family and the fear of what might happen to them. My suggestion to you would be, I know everybody's asked for a public statement from you in support of diversity and inclusion. I would urge you to think about the possibility of creating safe spaces for these students who are going through this emotional turmoil where they can come together and heal. One other thing that I would like to mention briefly, I know that we've talked a lot about comments that are being made from students to other students. I don't believe that our community is a racist community. I don't believe our community is a discriminatory community. I do believe that kids are impressionable, and that we have been bombarded with a lot of hateful commentary and a lot of hateful rhetoric that has been very public due to the previous election. And I believe that with kids, we are at a point where if we let this move forward without saying anything, that it is going to become normalized in the sense that people feel like it's okay to make these comments without really understanding the effects that it has on their community. I would suggest if you would think about or consider a way to not only state to the community that you are in support of inclusion and diversity, but also a way to educate your students as to the effects that these comments and these actions have on their own communities, because we're all part of one community. We're not different communities. There's not the brown community or the brown community or the white community. We are all one community. And I would sincerely urge you to create a space where students can have these conversations as to the effects of a lot of the comments and actions that are taking place, that I don't believe children, because before you graduate high school, you're still children, regardless of how adult-like you might feel. And I think it's a great opportunity as educators to approach this as an educator, to use this as a learning opportunity for our students. That's pretty much all I had to say. So thank you, and I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you. Belinda Ochoa. If there's anybody else that has planned to speak and hasn't signed up, if you could get onto the sign-up list, that would be great.
Hi, good evening. My name is Belinda Ochoa, and I live in the South Salem area. I just want to acknowledge Superintendent Christy Perry for making this statement that we were able to share with families, Spanish-speaking families. And I'm wearing my work sweater inside out, not on accident, but because I'm here mostly to speak as a parent with 2 daughters. Basically, I just wanted to know what zero tolerance means and to see if we can actually make that more tangible and more visible. I really would like to see if we could please, make sure that we are collaborating with any organizations that we can to support not only DACA youth, but the LGBT Muslim refugees and others, because we have had great support recently, but we've been slowly coming along, and it would be great to flourish and continue in a positive direction together as a Salem Keizer School Board. And I would like to be a strong advocate however I can. We need to focus and zoom in on making sure we provide that safe environment that the speaker before me was discussing. I've only, at one school that I help at, only one of the periods of the 6 periods took the time to have youth after elections write on postcards just how they're feeling and post it up on the wall. It was only one of the rest of the classes, and it didn't have no focus. It was just a feelings day. And we got everything from I hate that I forgot my homework at home to yeah, I have feelings about the elections. But there was space, there was acknowledgement of human youth. And if we can have a panel of community youth leaders, because I know so many, and make sure we focus and highlight that the youth are not alone, and that there are community and youth leaders doing things out here and advocating for the youth in our schools, and if they can meet them on school grounds, so that we can make sure not everybody can participate in outside of school activities, but we could bring them to the school and say, you're not alone, youth. You're not alone, Salem Keizer students. And when we are mandatory reporters, we have to acknowledge that and provide counseling if needed. Well, there has been some sort of trauma for some people, and we need to, we're reporting it here today, and we need to respond as a school and as a district. How would we do that if someone told us that they were being verbally abused? How would we do that with any of the mandatory reporting? We can also do that in response to the recent elections. Also, I have found myself having to explain over and over again what DACA means. So that means our teachers do not know, and we need to educate that. And maybe that's something that we can collaborate with different nonprofit organizations that have been working on this for years. Sorry, darn it. Basically, we want to make sure that we have this safe space and that we have somewhere that the youth know they can go to, even if it's not, even if we don't say something where they know they have an escape room where they could find peer support, student support, and teacher support. And I'll conclude with, I heard an awesome statement that another school said. They said, that's our job, to remain vigilant and pay attention to this, and primarily be as supportive as we can of our students. And I'd like to be involved as I can possibly be as a parent and as a youth advocate for 2 different organizations, and however I can. Thank you.
Ryan, are you Ryan?
I'm Ryan Somerville, 2265 Woodhill Street, Northwest in West Salem. Thank you, Board, and thank you, Superintendent Perry, for listening to everybody tonight. I stand here with everybody else that's spoken tonight. I concur with their stories. I'm a teacher at McNary High School, and I've experienced the words that are being said out there. I have a daughter who graduated from South Salem, who was a member of her GSA at that school, and I have a daughter at West Salem who's a junior there. I believe in the message that you're hearing tonight. History's happening. You guys have a chance to make a statement. People are asking you to make a public statement on where we stand. The kid that spoke a few speakers ago from McNary, from McKay, wow, I want to know him. He said, Salem's not a racist community, and I concur with that. But people looking for an answer will take the one they find. You guys need to provide them with an answer. I stand with the folks here tonight, and if you guys make a stand, I'll stand with you also. So please do the right thing. Thank you.
We're going to move on to action items. The first item on the agenda, I do want to just point out that we are having a work session after this meeting on the safe and welcoming schools. We put it on the agenda to give all of you an opportunity to testify because you don't get to testify at work sessions. But do not be alarmed that we don't have a vigorous conversation about this during this meeting, because we will be having that vigorous conversation in the work session afterwards. And you're very welcome to stay. So the first thing on the action items, resolution to adopt the 2017-18 OSBA legislative priorities and policies.
Madam Chair, on the next 2 action items, I need to declare a conflict of interest and not take part in the debate nor the discussion. As an employee of the Oregon School Boards Association, it is a direct conflict for me as a public official to vote on those 2 matters. Task will be my boss, so I don't think I had a vote on that particular issue. And the legislative policies and priorities were developed by my office.
I'm just going to read the introduction. The school board is required by OSBA, Oregon School Board Association policy, to publicly adopt the 2017-18 OSBA legislative priorities and policies as recommended by the Legislative Policy Committee processes. The outcome of the vote will be electronically entered on OSBA website as required. This item was presented to the school board for a first reading on November 8th and is now being presented for action. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Are you moving adoption?
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Chuck, seconded by Chris, to adopt the legislative priorities. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, are we ready to vote? Paul, you're pulling your microphone down.
I am. I just have a comment. The majority of the policies I think are great, and I am supportive. I have a couple I'm not too excited about, but I will vote for this just because I want to move most of the OSBA agenda along. I am curious about if there's any meat to the bones that have to do with how they plan on getting the full and adequate funding. And I know I can't ask Jim, so I don't know if Chris may know. Okay, Chris, can you give some meat to that?
I think you probably could ask Jim.
I don't know why you can't ask Jim.
You probably could.
Well, you have to make the decision on this because it's not a financial conflict I'm talking about, this particular division.
But I can say what I can say, and then if Jim wants to add, we can do that. OSBA has adopted a set of fairly general kinds of statements in here because they're trying to maintain flexibility, so as things move in the legislature during the session, they can react according to a general set of guidelines. And so what you're seeing is a general set of guidelines. There is a plan. The way I read it, it looks a lot like what Mark Haas was trying to do at the end of last session, in terms of looking at ways of changing revenue streams for schools. But that's again, it's a general kind of a idea. Suffice it to say that the new executive director, sitting at the opposite end of the table here from me, is pretty passionate about this being something that they see some results from this session around the idea that public schools be refunded back to the kinds of levels that we used to see, and maybe even better than that. So, and I think he took it sort of personally when we didn't get there at the last session.
So can I add just something as well? I went to OSBA annual meeting and listened to Mr. Green speak at the meeting, and so I will attempt to summarize what he said, which was OSBA is working with a number of partners statewide, including the business community, to look at ways to move forward through the legislature, something that will provide more stable funding than our current structure, which goes up when fortunes go up and goes down quickly when fortunes go down.
I still would like to see some details, and I guess I'm still somewhat stung too that OSBA did not actively support ballot measure 97, which seemed like an avenue for creating the funding for us, but that's water under the bridge, so.
Other comments?
I guess I'll just say that having sat at the table as these were being adopted, there were 20-some people sitting around this table, and so there were 40, there were over 40 of us. It was a long table. And there are pieces in here that I'm less than excited about too, but on the whole, I think it is a pretty accurate reflection of what we heard around a table of people from all over the state of Oregon getting together and talking about how do we move public schools forward.
Other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion to adopt the OSBA legislative priorities and policies signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Next thing on the agenda is the vote on the OSBA Board Director for Marion Region, position 11. The school board is required by Oregon State School Boards Association policy to publicly vote for candidates from the district's region to serve on OSBA's Board of Directors. There's one vacancy for Marion Region, position 11, and one candidate, Tess Morrison. You've had the opportunity to see her application materials and hear from her tonight. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we elect, we can't just have a vote. I move that we elect Tess Morrison to seat 11.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we elect Tess Morrison to the vacancy for Marion Region, position 11. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next thing on the agenda is contract-specific special procurement. I will turn it over to Christy Perry.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn it to Michael Wolf to describe this one. And this is related to one of the executive limitation violations that we struggle with around procurement. So, Mike.
Good evening, Chair McMorris-Audix, Superintendent Perry, members of the board. This is an action item for an exemption from the Public Contracting Code by authorizing a contract-specific special procurement. The district's Auxiliary Services Department has been working with Procurement and Contracting Services to establish a price agreement for heat transfers, which is really part of the silk screening process. It's a service that our Auxiliary Department provides for schools and departments. Auxiliary Services spends in excess of $10,000, but less than $100,000 per year, which was part of the issue that we had 2 years ago with an EL violation. And under statute, this volume requires a quote process, and our district policy requires that the purchasing department gather the quotes. Procurement's worked with Auxiliary to try and find vendors that would enter into price agreements, but these vendors really only deal in the retail market, and they're not willing to establish price agreements with the district. And so Auxiliary Services is requesting the exemption from Public Contracting Code for, as I'd stated, contract-specific special procurement. The department will follow the three-quote process each time they wish to procure the transfers and supplies. They'll follow procedures provided by the Procurement and Contracting Services Department to ensure proper documentation and record retention. Approval of this request is unlikely to encourage favoritism in awarding of public contracts or diminish competition, since the department will be seeking the best price at the time of purchase and reaching out to known sources that provide the service and the products. Approval of this request promotes the public interest by maintaining compliance with established district procedures and ORS 279B, and ensuring that the department is able to obtain best value on the purchase of heat transfers and related supplies. It allows the Auxiliary Services Department to provide products and services to schools and departments in the district up to $99,999, and then anything after that would be a formal solicitation process. So again, this is an action item that we're requesting that the board approve this request in accordance with ORS 279 in its capacity as the local contract review board.
Chris?
First, I'll move approval of this request, and then I have a question.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Chris?
My question is that this is pretty specific to these heat transfer issues. If we had another service that we were trying to procure and we had the same problem with vendors not being willing to give us quotes or prices ahead of time like this problem, would this transfer over to that, or is this solely for this one purpose?
It's solely for this one. It's very specific.
So you would come back to us with the next one if another one were to occur?
Yeah, and really what we're trying to do, our first preference would be to enter into a price agreement with a vendor. But we're not a Costco, and we're not a Walmart, and sometimes there are retailers, wholesalers out there that don't enter into price agreements, but they are willing to provide pricing for us. And so this just allows more flexibility for the auxiliary services under the guidance of the procurement department.
My only issue was that it's an exception, and I just wanted to make sure it was an exception for one thing and not for anything like it.
Jim?
Just one quick question, Mike, if you don't mind. In the last paragraph before board action on our board plate item here, it says, should the annual volume exceed $100,000? What are you using as your annual? Are you talking fiscal year or are you talking school year?
Fiscal.
Fiscal year, okay.
Yeah, in one budget cycle. Good question.
Other questions? Other comments? All in favor of adoption?
Aye.
Aye.
Been
Signify
a
by
long day,
saying
folks.
aye.
Please signify by saying aye. Everyone did. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is adoption of the consent calendar. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded for the adoption of the consent calendar. All items will be taken in a single motion. Did anyone need to pull anything? I should have asked that first. I'm a little out of sync tonight, you've noticed. Seeing none, all in favor of adoption of the consent calendar signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Next thing on the agenda is the readings, the first of which is the page that was walked in tonight, which is called Revised Reading 5A, Property Realignment with the City of Salem.
And also at your packet, as Mr. Wolf is coming forward, is a set of maps, and we went ahead and put these in color for you so they'd be a little easier to attend to. I'll turn it over to Mr. Wolf.
Good evening again. Tonight we're talking about first reading, property realignments with the City of Salem. And the background and discussion: over the last several decades, the district and the City of Salem acquired properties adjacent to each other to jointly locate schools and parks. Property lines were not adjusted to take into account appropriate ownership of the facilities such as ball fields and parks. As a result, both the district and the city now manage, utilize, and maintain assets that are wholly or partially located on property owned by the other entity. We've had discussions about some of our ball fields are actually city property at our high schools. To correct and clarify responsibilities, district and city staff have been working for several months on a proposal to realign ownership of multiple properties throughout the district. The realignment involves co-located park and school properties where current ownership does not align with current uses or users, or with responsibilities for maintenance and operation. The key objectives of the property realignments are properties primarily used by the district will be owned and operated by the district, and similarly, properties used by the city will be owned and operated by the city, and the district and city will share equally in the costs associated with this transfer. Initially, the proposal included 13 school and park sites as well as the district's Grice Hill property to be used as a balancing account to support the property realignments. City Council received public testimony requesting the removal of McKinley School Park and a small section of Englewood Park from the proposal. Both properties were to be transferred to the district and were subsequently removed from the package by unanimous vote from City Council, and they are no longer included in this current proposal. The map you see here and you have in your packet outlines the properties that are included in the proposal, and you have maps for each of the properties so you can see specifically what we're intending as far as transfer at each of the sites. And you also have an accounting and a spreadsheet that accounts and tracks for the changes in acreage associated with this transaction. An intergovernmental agreement, IGA, between the district and the city has been signed to begin the work necessary to accomplish the property realignments, and that's attachment 1 in your packet. A listing of the properties with proposed acres to be transferred is provided as exhibits A and B. As proposed, approximately 35 acres will be transferred from the city to the district, and approximately 40 acres will be transferred from the district to the city. The district's property at Grice Hill, which is located at 27th Place Northwest and Orchard Heights Road, will be used as the balancing account for the acreage transfer between the city and the district. The city will purchase the remaining 6.21 acres of Grace Hill. So that's the balancing effect of this. And in the IGA, each acre is priced at $75,000, which was a joint agreement between the city and the district. The recommendation is that the school board approve the transfer and sale of property, the 6.21 acres, as described in the IGA, and authorize the chief operations officer to take the necessary actions to execute the property transactions. This item is presented as a first reading and will be returned for action at the January 10th, 2017 school board meeting. Happy to entertain any questions.
Are there any questions?
Long road.
Seeing none, I think we'll move to the next is the addition to board policy that I've already stated we are bringing to the work session next. So we'll move on to reports. The first is monitoring report of EL6 staff evaluation. Superintendent Perry.
And I just want to make one additional comment on the safe and welcoming schools policy. It'll be moved into work session, and because it's a board action item, we won't act on it tonight. That would be, we'd have to act on it at the January meeting. Since the work session, you don't take action. So just as a point of clarification of the process. The next report is executive limitation number 6, staff evaluation. And this is executive limitation report 6 of 12. And in essence, this report says that we need to have evaluation systems in place and administered correctly for licensed staff, classified staff, and administrative personnel. And it also requires an annual report on the evaluation process. So there are no evidences of non-compliance. I will let you know that we are beginning the undertaking of the revision to the legend system, since that's been in effect for a while, and the committee, I think, is on their second meeting. So this, there will be some changes, but it is a joint committee working with teachers and our association and the administration on the Legends evaluation system. So lots more to come on this in the future, but for this report, no evidences of noncompliance.
Are there questions? Paul?
So from what I'm understanding you to say is all evaluations that were to be completed last year were completed on time and complete?
They were either completed on time or with the appropriate extension, and we have a monitoring system in place for that.
Okay.
So I'll remind the board that the executive limitations are part of the superintendent's evaluation. We usually signify whether we accept the report or not by thumbs up or thumbs down or thumbs sideways has been the practice of some individuals. And we will move on to the next thing on our agenda, which is the strategic plan report, prepare all students for college and career by implementing rigorous aligned K-12 curriculum and educational systems such as advancement via individual determination, AVID, equal opportunity schools, EOS, and career and technical education, CTE. It appears that we have Mr. Carlisle available for that. Will you sing?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I think we can all, I don't see this is working, Mary. Click. I think we can all probably recite by heart what our vision statement is for the district. I think we're surrounded by images of not only our vision statement, but also our mission statement. And item number 1 in our strategic plan, we're about 3 clicks into it now, Mary. Item number 1 in our strategic plan is all about supporting the vision and the mission. which is to make sure that we are preparing all students for college and career by implementing a rigorous and aligned K-12 curriculum and educational systems such as advancement via individual determination, the work of equal opportunity schools, and career tech. In the most basic terms, click.
Click.
Oh, it's working now. All right. In our most basic terms, college and career readiness is about two different things. One is that a student could enter a college classroom and be ready to be successful without remediation. And the other one is that they could enter into the workplace and be successful there as well. And this slide describes for us the necessity that those two things work closely together, and that it's an and, not an either or. Jobs that only require a high school diploma are evaporating. Virtually none of the newly created jobs in the last 10 years are attainable without some sort of post-secondary learning, whether that's from a trade school, a university, or a community college. And so while not every student necessarily needs a four-year college degree after they need us, it is clear that they are going to need some sort of post-secondary education, so we must allow them to be ready for that. So as we look to our curriculum, we need to make sure that we have high expectations for rigorous learning and that there's an alignment so that things are making sense as they're connected together. These are just some of the activities that we've been focusing on for this year to work on that alignment. One of those things is the alignment towards the new next generation science standards. And so in our K through 5 curriculum, that's been around the development and alignment of units and lessons. And for the secondary levels, in those grade levels, it's been making sure that we've implemented the new standards into the courses that we're offering to our students. We'll continue that work next year until we have full alignment arrived at. And then another area of focus for us has been around the area of inquiry as a theme and a focus in our secondary professional development. Inquiry is that opportunity to teach students critical thinking skills. We do our best thinking when we're asking questions because it encourages us to then explore and investigate what the possible answers and solutions would be. And so to that end, inquiry-based teaching and learning helps our students think about how to ask increasingly complex questions and to think about their own thinking. We've also been focusing across all grade levels on the use of data teams. That has clearly taught us that we are more effective when we work efficiently as a team together, looking at student learning, making decisions together about instruction. And we've also been focusing on STEM as an integration opportunity between math and science, and looking at our textbook collections in classrooms as well as our text collections in the libraries to make sure that we're working towards a more diverse collection. Students need to see themselves in the instruction. They need to see themselves in the things that they're reading. We also are looking at our systems, and we've named 3 of them in our strategic plan goal. Because we have a large and diverse group of students who have different aspirations, the way that we prepare them for life after high school is highly complex work, and it requires the use of good, reliable systems. So I just have a few images and snapshots of some of our data that serve as examples for us tonight that will illustrate the impact that these systems are having for our students and for their possibilities after high school. We talk a lot about AVID, so do other people, including the guy who wrote the book. Actually, he's written several books on college readiness. Maybe the most famous one is College Knowledge. Dr. David Conley, who the bulk of his work was through the University of Oregon. And he said about AVID that students say they'll go to college, but they don't necessarily do the things that actually get them there. And AVID provides that system for teachers to work closely with students to help them really establish those goals and develop those aspirational strategies that will help them navigate through high school and be successful in college. So AVID as a college and career readiness strategy It's a lot about making sure that students are at or above grade level. So for example, in math, we need to make sure that as early as middle school, we have students at or above their grade level in math. And AVID does a really impressive job in helping us do that. As you can see here, in the 8th grade, all of our students are at least in 8th grade Common Core math if they are in the AVID elective. That means that AVID is providing a rigorous system of support behind them and allowing them to develop the academic determination to be successful. You can also see that as AVID students advance into high school and through high school, they increase their involvement in AP and IB courses, as well as dual credit classes. This is a critical step in the success that students will experience after high school, that they've had the opportunity to take and succeed in courses that resemble the level of rigor that you'll experience in college.
I don't think I've seen this word before, Cambridge courses. I mean,
Yeah,
I've seen
my
the word separate.
understanding of that word is dual credit. We would describe it as dual credit.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. I also included a snapshot. It's a little tricky to see all those little bars, but I brought this snapshot of what has happened at Stevens Middle School as an example of the impact that AVID is having school-wide. Because as this school has worked to not only bring AVID elective courses to a select number of students, but also to bring the strategies forward for all students, we see something rather significant when we look at Stevens Middle School's data in reading and math as compared to schools with similar demographics to Stevens Middle School. You can see the black arrow in 2008-9, 7-8, as the first year of AVID implementation. And from that point forward, the bars start to reverse their position, and Stevens begins to surpass the levels that similar schools without AVID were doing.
Is that school-wide at Stevens?
That's school-wide at Stevens, yes. Another system that we have put into place, this at our high schools, is the work of equal opportunity schools. I think it's maybe obvious to us, but let's reinforce for ourselves that one of the best ways we help students prepare for college is to experience it even while they're in high school. And we can replicate some of that with the level of rigor that they'll experience in AP, IB, or dual credit classes. So by giving students access to the kind of rigorous learning that they're likely to encounter when they go to college, we can see a bump up in terms of the likelihood that they'll be successful in college as well. Just by taking an AP class, a student's chance of completing college goes up by 10 to 20%. And then if they take the end-of-year exam and pass that, the increase is even more pronounced. In a separate study, similar data shows the success that students experience not only finishing high school, but being successful in college. Our problem in Salem Keizer was one that was similar to that of nearly every other district in the nation. We were not doing so well at giving access to all of our students to these classes. And so when we were looking at the enrollments, we saw mostly white and Asian upper and middle class students enrolled in our AP and IB classes. The work of equal opportunity schools helped us to address that by putting in some new strategies. So we were addressing that disproportionately high percentage of students and what they needed in order to start believing in their ability to be successful in AP and IB courses as well. So here's what our enrollment looked like prior to the work with equal opportunity schools. This is back in 2013. And this shows our student enrollment in AP and IB courses in our 6 large comprehensive high schools. The bar on the left represents our benchmark group. So that's our white and Asian, middle and high income students. They set the benchmark at 23% So in other words, 23% of those students were enrolled in at least one AP or IB class. That was the benchmark then that we set for all of the other groups. And you can see the dashed line that demonstrates the gap between the colored part of the bar and the empty part of the bar. That dashed line represents the gaps for each of the other groups by ethnicity and income level. Our project began with the three of our high schools, North McKay and Sprague, in that following year. And each of these high schools launched into some really deep systemic change and looking deeper into student aspirations and academic assets. And they helped students to develop a stronger growth mindset. All three of these high schools were successful in closing their enrollment gaps. And not surprisingly, as we met those enrollment goals of 23% for all of our students, we actually saw a bump up in our benchmark group as well. Now that we have all 6 large comprehensive participating, we have enrolled nearly 1,100 more students in our AP and IB courses as a result of this work. We can be very proud to say that Salem Keizer is among the 1% of school districts in the nation, and we are one of the largest school districts in the nation to have arrived at this level of equity in our AP and IB courses. This has been an important college and career readiness effort in Salem Keizer. It requires us to think deeply about the things we value the most, seeing that all students, regardless of ethnicity or race or income level, have that access to rigorous learning and opportunities. The final system that I'd like to present with you tonight is about our career and technical education. While some of the work that we are doing in our CTE programs is highly visible, such as the CTE Center, much of the work that we've been participating in this year has been not so visible. It's been the work on strengthening our systems and alignment, taking a look at our portfolio of CTE courses across all of our high schools and the CTE Center, and to how best to make strategic resource decisions to strengthen them even more. We are most interested in developing stronger pathways and programs that actually align into post-secondary training opportunities for students, and to help lead students towards those meaningful jobs and meaningful pay opportunities that await them. One indicator that we are on the right path is the increase that we've seen in secondary pathway funding that came from the Oregon Department of Education. That funding nearly doubled this year, and you can see the criteria by which the programs must qualify. And so the fact that we had that level of funding increase suggests to us that we're on the right path by doing some of this work. But I have some other data that's really interesting that I want to share with you. What you're looking at here is what happens for our students when they participate in a state-approved CTE program. Each shade of the bars represents a cohort of our CTE students who graduated from Salem Keizer over the past 3 years. We still don't have the 2016 data yet. But these students are called concentrators because they participated in a state-approved program and earned at least 1 full credit in the program. Perkins funds, which are federal dollars, come to school districts like ours every year to support approved CTE programs. And the Perkins funders established that target that you see on that chart. Our high school completion rates for CTE concentrators are significantly higher than for students who do not participate in a CTE program. So this data draws us into some questions about whether there might be a relationship between high school completion and participation in a state-approved CTE program as a way of developing yet another graduation strategy, equity strategy, and career and college readiness strategy. Another example of this is what happens for concentrators in math. So what you're seeing here is, again, those 3 cohorts by graduating class. And it's an area where our CTE concentrators specifically have excelled. these students, depending on when they graduated, either they met on the OAKS math or the SBAC math or an approved equivalent assessment for math proficiency for graduation. And again, this brings us some questions about whether there might be more of a relationship than we've understood before about participation in CTE state-approved programs and how that impacts learning and opportunities for success and advancement. So this is part of the impetus that is having us take a good long look at our long-term vision and reach for our CTE offerings, and working towards more pathways that align with our local colleges and programs as a college and career readiness strategy. I'll finish by just saying that the landscape has shifted dramatically in the last 10 years in our workforce and in post-secondary education. Our students today have to be far more nimble, ready, adaptable, and educated in order to be competitive. The work that schools need to do in order to prepare them is clearly about keeping expectations high and ensuring that students have gotten the experiences necessary to be successful at work, school, and in life.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there questions? Jim?
I have a couple of questions for you, Kelly. When you were talking about the alignment of the sciences for our middle school and elementary schools?
The alignment in elementary is more around units and lessons, and the alignment work in our secondary schools has been more about the courses,
So
science classes that
my
students.
question is, we talk about alignment of resources. How are our textbooks aligned to these NGSS standards now? I mean,
Not
are we
well.
going to have to do an adoption? Are we going to have to look at a new adoption to make sure that our textbooks are aligned to those standards, or?
If textbooks are the answer, then yes.
And I know textbooks aren't always the answer,
Right.
but I'm looking at like my sons and daughters' textbooks with published dates of the 90s. I'm not quite sure if they probably align to these standards.
Correct. And I would say that our curriculum department, our experts, our teachers, classroom practitioners are incredibly resourceful about finding other resources beyond just the textbooks, but you're accurate in saying that if we were going to align our textbooks, that would require an adoption.
And I guess I'm a little concerned in that we're requiring our classroom teachers to be resourceful to go out and find those. We as a district should be finding those for them. I mean, I understand we do have, curriculum and we've got a district-wide level assessment, but when I hear from teachers that they're having to go make copies of things that they've found that are more relevant and up to date with regard to standards, that's a little disconcerting to me. I'm glad they're resourceful. They're doing the things they're supposed to do for our boys and girls, but we should be providing that to them as a district. And that's a little disconcerting because whatever time they're doing that, it's probably on their prep time or it's on their own time. And we've got a lot of professional development we've got to give to them. There's a lot of other things they could be doing during that time. I'm very grateful they're doing it, Kelly, but I want to make sure we're providing them and our students the adequate tools with which to meet these new standards. Because I've looked at these NGSS and they're tough. And I want to make sure we've got the resources in our educators and our students' hands to give them the most relevant, up-to-the-date information with regard to that. So I don't know how we go about that because it was the same thing when we did the math update. We had teachers going out and getting copies of their own math things, and I just want to make sure we're staying aligned across the district and across schools, and they're getting the most relevant data, and they're not having to spend a whole lot of their time doing it.
Fully agreed, and I would just say that our strongest resource right now is great expertise and leadership in the folks that we have doing the curriculum work to do their level best to support students and staff members.
And the other question I had, just real quickly, Kelly, on your presentation, you talked about expansion of APIB offerings as well as dual credit, and I know we've expanded those in the high schools. My question is, what's our current ratio of counselor to student at our high school level?
High.
Hundreds. I know that answer.
Yes.
Because I do have a son in one of our high schools, and it's exceptionally high. And that's a pipeline problem for our students. If they can't get in to see a counselor, or the counselor's caseload is so high, for students to sit down and meet with a counselor and talk about, hey, I'd really like to go to college. I'd really like to think about taking this AP course. There's days and weeks that are scheduled out at some of our high schools to meet with a counselor, and I think that's a disservice to our students. I know it's a resource issue, but I'd really like to have the opportunity for our students to have a better ratio of counselors at all our levels. I know particularly in high school, because that's the one my son's dealing with, and he was extremely frustrated at not being able to see his counselor with regard to how to get to the math class he wanted to get to in order to graduate and move on to college. So I know that's a frustration with my son. If it's my son, I can tell you there's probably hundreds of other kids across the district, thousands of other kids across the district that are experiencing that. So I'd really like to focus on what we're doing with regard to try to get our counselors' caseload down. And the other question I have, and you can bring this back information to me, is what is our current counselor caseload? And how many of our counselors actually have language diversity so that they can talk to students who don't have English as their first language?
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Paul?
Can you go back 2 or 3 slides? And I don't understand, if you can explain, in the English learner, it appears that, is that the same? Or did that drop from between 13 and 14 and 14, 15?
It is a drop, and it reflects a change in the calculation for the graduation rate.
That's what I was asking. Can you go
Okay.
to the next slide? Go forward one. Because you've got the same problem, it appears, with SPED and District CTE between 13, 14 and 14, 15. Am I not? Yeah. 13, 14, 14,
Right,
15.
and those numbers
They go
will,
down.
yeah, they did. And they'll fluctuate a little bit every year, primarily because this is not a super large number. So we are going to see some fluctuations in the trend data. But in general, what we're seeing is far better results for students who are CTE concentrators than their non-CTE counterparts.
Okay, and then one other quickly. And are students being told when they're taking the dual credit for college that could impact their financial aid in future years?
You know, that's such a new development that I can't promise you that that's happening in every interaction that we have with our students. But certainly, whereas before we may have felt like the metric of the number of credits being earned
Right.
was a measure of success.
Right.
Now it's something to monitor, but it's not necessarily a true indicator of whether a student is really gaining that momentum, because they may strategically be deciding not to take the transcripted credit
Right.
in a dual credit class.
Okay.
Chris?
I have just a couple thoughts as I watched what I saw up on the screen there. One is that a few years ago, it's more like 5 now, when we did those huge cuts, one of the things that really bothered me was that we had lots of testimony from students and staff coming before us talking about the incredible effect that CTE programs had on them as we cut those CTE programs. And the reason we did that was primarily because we had to staff the required 4 credits of English and 3 credits of social studies in the state requirements. You're showing all sorts of great, in our experience throughout the district, out at the CTE center and wherever, is that CTE programs where kids learn with their hands, getting their hands dirty, as I like to say, and where they're learning through an experiential kind of learning, is really powerful for getting kids engaged and getting them engaged in rigorous learning. I'm just really intrigued, and I think it's something that the board really needs to keep going on this work around what is it that we're really trying to get to with our education of kids, to somehow validate the fact that CTE and AP courses and these kinds of experiences for students, which tend to get cut in budget cut years, actually have an incredible effect on keeping kids in school and keeping kids learning. And how can we, because we're going to hit another budget cut, there's just no doubt about that. How do we begin to value these kinds of things so that we can not have to cut them whenever the budget goes down. That's one thought. The other thought is, as I've been watching, the numbers always seem to be around on the AP courses and those kinds of things. They always seem to be around 25 to 30%, and the goals are, maybe 50%. And I can't help but ask myself the question: what about the other 50%? What about the other 50 to 75% of the students who aren't taking those courses, and yet we all know that they have to take some sort of post-secondary training in order to really find success in life? It's great that they're getting better. I don't want anybody to not hear that piece, but we're still so far from 40-40-20 that it's almost scary. And it seems to me that we need to take lessons like this CTE lesson and these different kinds of things and start to value them so that we keep them even in down times, and get more kids engaged in those higher level learnings, because it's the only way we're ever going to get to 40-40-20. Those are my thoughts.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next thing on our agenda is information. I'll point to you that there is, of course, a work session after this meeting, and our next meeting is January 10th, with a work session at 5 o'clock and a board meeting at 6 o'clock, and a budget committee meeting on January 24th of that, of January as well. So plan on 2 meetings in January, 2 nights, possibly 4 meetings. Next thing on our agenda is audience communication on non-agenda items, and I know for a fact there were at least 2 people signed up. Thank you, Mary. David Haggerty is first, and Mindy Merritt is second.
Good evening. My name is David Haggerty. I was been a math teacher since 1969. I was recruited to teach at McKay in 1982, retired in 2003, went to Blanchette till 2010. I've been teaching and then substituting since then. I'm here to talk about your new substitution system. It is doing very well at getting licensed teachers into positions for subbing. I have received 5 calls from September through the end of November. I'm an advanced math teacher. These were advanced calls, at least 2 weeks in advance that I got these. During that time, I also received 5 calls in the morning, 5:30. By the time I went through there figuring out my new ID, but by the time I got through all there and got to the point where I accept the job, the phone came back saying, sorry, this job is already gone. What is happening is that I can pay the company a certain amount of money every month, and they will now notify me of things over the phone, jobs coming up as they are. In other words, I have to pay to substitute. I refuse to do that. I'm getting a lot of golf in. Basically, it's a pay-to-play type of system. Also, what's happening is I'm a math specialist. Math teachers are getting substitutes that are not necessarily qualified in that particular area. In the past, if it was a math teacher, they went to math substitutes first to get them into those positions. That's not what's happening at this time. It's basically kind of frustrating that those of us that are in this position are now put on the sideline, whereas I know of one person who says they have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, sit at the computer, and wait to see if something comes up so they can hit the button to get that job. Normally, they start calling at 5:30. So it's just, oh, and one other thing, I don't know if you saw the sports page yesterday, that was my picture on the volleyball thing. I received a phone call during that time at 5:30. Obviously, I cannot answer it then either. So it's basically frustrating for me that during times when I'm available to substitute, that I am not being called. and I am not going to go about doing this. I just want to let you know of the system and that the frustration that I'm having, some of the teachers are having, some of the schools are having with getting the particular substitutes to fill qualified positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mindy?
Hi, Superintendent Perry, Board Chair McMorris Addix, Vice Chair Kylo, and members of the board. My name is Mindy Merritt, and I reside at 2381 Teal Drive, Southeast Salem. And I'm here to speak to you as the president of Salem Keizer Education Association. First, I want to thank you for the time and energy that the board and the district has committed to the important work necessary for our students, educators, families, and community members, as evidenced tonight in the planned work session for the new board policy on safe and welcoming schools that will be considered for adoption in January. In addition, I'd like to share with you that SKEA is currently working on language of our own addressing this important concern that we hope to share with you in the new year. I would like to thank you for the support of district leadership and the collaborative culture that we continue to strive for to jointly address what we know is best for students. The continuation of this culture is going to be critical as we engage in bargaining and the successor agreement in the spring. For now, I hope you have a wonderful holiday break, spending time with those that are important to you, and SKEA looks forward to the continued work on safe and welcoming schools in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Reminding the board that we are over an hour late to start our work session, not to stifle any communication that you might want to share. Are there board report on activities?
I can't not say that I got to judge Lego Robotics again last weekend. What a day. It was such a great day. Wonderful day.
Marty?
I got to go to my very first girls volleyball game at McKay. It was pretty cool.
Next thing on the agenda
Sorry,
is-
that was like basketball. I had one of those brain moments. It was not volleyball. It was basketball.
I was going to say, it was a little bit after the volleyball season.
I'm
but-
tired and have had no dinner. My brain's not
Were they
functioning.
bouncing the ball or spitting the ball?
Yeah. Superintendent's comments.
You don't even have to remind me. I will cut my comments off to none so that we can get to our work session.
With that, we are adjourned, and we'll reset the room, I believe, because we're going to sit at tables, not at this deal, so we can have a conversation together, and we will start our work session as quickly as we can. Board District 24J of Marion County, Salem, Oregon, is called for 7 p.m. December 13th, 2016, in Room 2 at the Support Services Center, 2575 Commercial Street, Southeast Salem, Oregon. It is a first reading on a new board policy, safe and welcoming schools. For the record, let it reflect that all board members are present except for Chuck Lee. Gonna hit it?
So this is my first attempt at a board policy around safe and welcoming schools. I don't know that we've had no conversation or don't have a recommendation yet of where it would even fit within the policy manual because that you are a policy governance board, but I have wondered if it's maybe even not a policy, but some sort of a preface document to our policy governance. One of the things we had talked about maybe even 2 years ago that with our policy governance manual, wouldn't it be great if we had an introduction that states, here's how we govern? And then if you had some overarching statements you wanted to make as a board around safe and welcoming schools or whatever it is you want to say as a board, that it could be in that preface section of the board. We tried to draft this so that it demonstrated the executive limitations that you'd already set for me, and much of this wording is in other places, either in your either in your board policies or within our district policies. And much of what was asked for tonight is my work, as you know. So we just have to think about what's that intersect with policy governance, as at the same time, what I know from what you heard is that our communities would like some sort of a really bold and public statement from the school board as well, which is not always traditional for within the policy governance work. So a couple things I heard about from I tried to weave the testimony and think about what I heard that might have been missing. I know the coalition has asked for family immigration status, native language. There's maybe a little bit more bold words in hazing, intimidation, menacing, and threatening. And then I also heard wanting some sort of a statement about what happens with immigration officials. We do have a district policy on immigration officials, and that is not in your work, nor does it fit within the policy governance. So anyway, I'll just open up for discussions and thoughts based on the draft policy, where you want to head. Do you want to do something different than a policy? And go from there.
Were you going to raise your hand or not? Marty?
One second.
Yeah.
Then Jim?
But it really has nothing to do with the policy. I didn't know we had a district policy on immigration. I was curious if we could maybe get a copy of that or something, because I don't know what that is.
And it's on immigration officials coming to schools, and it's the same guidelines we've lived under since 1997, which is protection of student privacy information, and if there's some sort of a lawful request for information, then we run it through our district legal counsel. But yes, I could get you a copy of it.
Jim?
So, are we on TV? Okay. I didn't know if we needed the microphone or not. So I don't have a problem with the language or the discussion that we've had tonight. I think our community is wanting us to make a bold statement, and I don't have a problem with that. My issue is in adopting a policy like this, in that we are a policy governance body, and we've not considered policies in this way. I think this may more fit in a resolution or a preface to our governance commitment, or some other work that we do with regard to this. We have purposely, back in 2007, our predecessors, Rick, I think you were the only person on the board here at the time, moved to policy governance. And that's different than what most districts do. And I've worked with districts where they have huge policy manuals and they spend their time in policy work, and we try to stay above that fray and let our administrative team do that work, and I think that's important work for them to do, and it focuses us on results. I know this is a big issue for our community, so I'm not saying I don't want to do something. I just don't think a board policy is the way to go. I think either a preface statement to our existing policy governance. Maybe it's time to run our policy governance, our results policy, our executive limitations through an equity lens that we've not done before, and put that equity lens on there in addition to some sort of resolution from this board stating that our schools are safe and welcoming environments for all of our students, and cull out those that we've talked about tonight. I'm a little concerned that we start to go down this road of doing policy. We're going to get into that policy work that we have somewhat avoided. I'm not saying that to minimize in any way, shape, or form the issue before us, but it's a different type of work. And if you're going to do policy, best practices say you don't restate existing policy that you already have. It should be short statements, it should be concise statements, it should be focused on the issue before you, and what I see in the draft policy is restatement of existing policies. And I think one of the things that's somewhat frustrating to parents, because I have parents come to me and say sometimes, well, what does the district do on this? I say, well, we have administrative policies that have been adopted, and they don't know where they are. Sometimes they're not easy to, I can find them on our website because I know what I'm looking for. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to put out what we actually have in policy currently. I think a broader statement on a resolution, having safe and welcoming schools, can achieve what I think we heard tonight, in addition to maybe a preference to our existing policy governance, whether it's board governance, executive limitation, or in the area of our results policy, to run all those through an equity lens that we've not done before. And I think that would be better work for this board than starting down the road of policies like this. Not in opposition to what's in the content. It's more the work that we do as a board has us focused on results for our students, and I'd like to stay at that level while making a strong statement to our community that we are going to have safe and welcoming schools. We want our schools to be zones where excuse me, where students are not subject to bullying and harassment and discrimination in any way, shape, and form, and that silence can equal violence. And we need to train our staff that they need to speak up. It's a teachable moment for them with their students and the communities at large, for us to do something about that. I think doing a resolution rather than a policy while doing the other work I mentioned may be better work for this board than going down this route. But I want to make sure we acknowledge those communities and folks that spoke tonight, and the folks who don't feel comfortable speaking. We need to assure that we do have safe and welcoming schools for them. And I believe that doing this is important, but do it in a different way.
Chris, we were kind of going around. Paul, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm still thinking about what Jim just said.
Okay. Chris?
I think, given the way we do business under policy governance, that there are a number of things that are stated in this policy that could either be added to sections of existing executive limitations, or there could be a new executive limitation written that said, that clearly defines what a safe and welcoming school system looks like, what kinds of training our staff is going to be going through, what kinds of experiences we're going to provide for students to let them understand what harassing statements are like. Not for long, that's a harassing statement, and it was made based on race. It was not, but it's a very subtle statement, and it's important for our students to understand why that's an inappropriate statement. I'm referring to the testimony earlier. So I think that somewhere within our executive limitations, we need to have a set of expectations for our superintendent about not running a district that doesn't, and then clearly define what it is that we don't do, and by extension, what we do do. And I think, as a couple of our testifiers said this evening, a large part of that is really focusing on how we react as a teaching force, how we react as administrators when these things come up. And I think only through putting some sort of monitoring system on that, number of incidents reported, number of incidents reacted to in certain ways, something that comes back to the board on a regular basis so that we can be assured that the district is in fact training, is in fact working with students, is in fact reacting appropriately when they have an incident. Can we as a board know that this is true, that we have a safe and welcoming school district? So I would like to see us take these ideas and put them within the executive limitation structure.
Rick?
Quite a bit of this is you pulled out of the executive limitations, didn't you?
Yeah, there's some places we did. I'd have to go back and do it.
Because a lot of this wording looks familiar as far as executive limitation. From what Jim is saying, I'm kind of on the same page in that I could see a resolution, which is an immediate statement by the board, be it we resolve, the correct wording to do that. Then a long-term work is either doing what Chris is thinking, or a preface that spells out a little more. Well, there's some other things we've talked about in the past, maybe prefacing that we haven't tackled yet, so maybe it's time to tackle this piece as well as the others to do a preface. So, but to adopt this policy as it's written isn't quite what we've been doing under policy governance. I'd want to know where we're going to fit this in and how does it fit in our structure if we're going to do that. So.
Mr. Dikopoulos?
Thank you. Just as your legal counsel, let me say that words matter and where you put them matters. So when the board considers a policy, you're really thinking as kind of a quasi-legislative body, which is enforceable as if it were a law, because your policies are essentially the laws of the district. So when you try to restate a policy you already have by restating it in a different ways, you just create some unintended consequences that you're trying to aim for really a strong resolution of here's where we stand on welcoming schools. But when you have to add a whole new policy to talk about policies you already have, you have unintended consequences. And I just look at this draft, and I know it's a draft, but in paragraph 2.3, to ensure a learning environment that is free from disruption from both internal and external. And we have to think about the external things that happen to the school district over which we have no control. And do we want to, as a matter of law, say that we're responsible for ensuring environment that's free from external disruption, i.e. funding disruption, natural disasters. I mean, that you can just kind of think outside the box. What would that be? We go on here. No student be excluded. Well, we do have an expulsion policy. So we need to think about, again, the unintended consequences of having a new policy that may compete with existing policies. Just one more example. We have a statement that it's a little bit different than your equal educational opportunity statement, because it says all students have equal educational opportunities and treatment. Now, we have 6,000 special ed students, which is more students than most school districts have in the state of Oregon. And they're subject to individualized treatment, not equal. They're subject to an equal opportunity, and you have a policy on equal opportunity for education, but equal treatment, we're individualizing their treatment, their education, and they might get more services. It might be unequal services because of the intensity of their needs. So again, having a policy that competes with other policies, that raises kind of troubling questions on things that you don't intend, that you never intended, we need to be careful of that. A resolution doesn't have that same problem.
That's answered my question.
Do you have any comments?
Sure. As I read this, I think what I heard tonight is that there's a desire. I find that the D, the A, and the T missing is causing distractions for me. I guess I'm old enough that RF meant something different. I could see this becoming a resolution with the additions that they talked about, that you mentioned as well in 2.1, with the understanding that it would be incorporated into other places. I mean, behind 1, 2, 3, 4, you insert the word whereas, and behind 5, you insert be it resolved that, and you have a resolution. And then it is in one place. It does cover what we are thinking about. And the expectation is on the superintendent, at least as I read 5, that the superintendent will take appropriate corrective action to ensure that this is put in one place that we all could find it, which is what the concern is we don't have it. And I mean, one of the things I heard is that we have to go and be much more aggressive about teaching our staff what to do in these cases and how aggressive do we want them to be to find these and to report them, and to whom do they report them? And then, of course, my general concern is what do those they report them to do with them, rather than just letting them go? That there's accountability all the way through the system. So that would be my, so I could support what Jim is saying with those modifications. Because as Paul said, the resolution doesn't carry quite the same weight, and it puts the weight back on the superintendent to come up with the right wording to get it done, which I'm sure she could do by the January meeting, because she has nothing else to do.
Chris?
The sort of, for me, probably the thing that I fuss with the most as I think about this stuff is what happens if and when the federal government decides that they are going to, in fact, go out and round up people. And I think that's the fear that I heard tonight from several of the speakers, is that they would love to have assurance that if ICE shows up at the door and says, we're coming for student X, that the district would say, no, you can't come in. I don't think we can do that as a district. I don't think we can do that legally, but I think that's what people are calling for. And so what I'm interested in, and where I'm going with this, is to know what other people in the nation who are like-minded, that we think that that would be wrong for ICE to come in and start rounding up people. How are people protecting themselves against that kind of action? Are people protecting themselves against that kind of action? We hear about resolutions in cities where cities are saying we will continue to be sanctuary cities. We're hearing that different people are doing these kinds of things. Well, obviously, if ICE decided to go into that city where they said we're a sanctuary city and clear people out, where the rubber really hits the road, where is that? And what kind of legal kind of pushback would a school district have on an intrusion from an external intrusion? That would be an external disruption, and that's one of the words we have in here. How could our district respond to that in a manner that protected our kids and protected our legality at the same time? I would just be interested in knowing more about that. Is there a way to do that? Is there a way for us to tread that tricky tightrope and find a way to be protective of our kids while they're in school?
Well, we've written on this for 20 years. This is not the first time that there's been a concern about deportation. About 25 years ago, we just looked at this. The opinion letter from my office, it's about 25-year-old opinion about what does the school district do when a federal official comes to a school. Well, they don't get access, just like they're a law enforcement officer. We don't let free access to students with law enforcement. Do they have a warrant? That's a different matter. So we have asked these questions before. The law hasn't changed in this regard. The sensitivity has, and we have a work instruction that the superintendent mentioned on this. What do school officials do if an ISIS official comes to a school and says, we want to talk with this student? We know what to do about that. Having a warrant for the arrest of a person is a different matter. And we know how to react in those situations.
So, question that causes me a follow-up question, and it's not for you, Paul, it's more for Christy. We got this opinion 25 years ago. It hasn't changed. The law hasn't changed. Do we tell our staff what to do? Do they know what to do if an immigration official comes to the school and they don't have a warrant? Do they know what to do if they do have a warrant? Because somebody comes in flashing a federal badge, all of a sudden, things go, anybody flashing a badge, whether it's federal badge, state badge, county badge, people go, that has an imprimatur with it. And they start to, have we trained our staff on what it means when those things happen in our schools? Have we kept them up to date on the memo we got from Paul's firm 25 years ago on what's going on with regard to the law? Now, that's not to say the law can't change, and we can lobby our members of Congress in a variety of things, but Do we have that information out to our buildings?
We have it out to our buildings via the principal and office manager, because it's that they come in the front door.
Yeah,
We have
right.
not done a blanket district.
It might not be a bad idea to at least share the protocols we have in place that our offices are going to know about, because what I heard tonight was some classroom teachers who had concerns about that. They may not be aware of the protocol. It may not be a bad idea to make them aware of that protocol. And I want to make sure that the folks that are listening on TV or folks that are in the audience, since my back's to them, I don't know who's all here, maybe just only district staff, but that we are not minimizing the conversation about what this is all about. And I think through a resolution, it's some way we can act quickly and be very loud to our community with regard to what we believe as a school board and as a governing body over our schools in our two communities of Salem and Keizer. What we're talking about a lot here is process. And I want to make sure they understand that the substance of what was brought forward in this is extremely important, and we need to address it. How we do it is what we're kind of talking about right now. And I don't want to get lost on the fact that I think there was some urgency for action. I think urgency for action for this board can be a resolution, because Paul's right. When you write policies and they start to become internally inconsistent, there are unintended consequences that can cause you issues down the road. That's what we do at OSBA, where I work in our policy department, to try to make sure that that doesn't occur so that districts don't get in trouble. But I want to make sure for folks that are listening that we're talking about process. I think we are all in agreement from what I've heard around the table, maybe depending on the wording, is the substance of the matter before us.
Chris?
And I'm perfectly okay with the resolution as long as, along with it, we go back and we look at these things that were pulled out of the executive limitations area, different areas, and be able to show the community very clearly, here's what the school board monitors that will allow us as a school board to assure that in fact these things are happening within our district. So if there are things that are stated in this resolution that we can't point at a place in the executive limitations where we monitor it, I think they need to be added to the executive limitations personally. And so I think we need to have a fairly complete look at those to make sure that we can be sure that these things are happening.
Do you need to respond to Chris?
No,
Or can
just
I
more
ask,
generally.
can Marty go first?
Whatever you choose.
I just want to say that I'm okay with a resolution as long as it doesn't say that we will do anything that's unlawful. So, you know, I don't imagine that there's going to be a bus pulling up to a school and they're going to haul kids out, when I know that's what they're afraid of. But it sounds like what we do is if they have a warrant, then we do get the student, whether it's the police or whoever, correct? So as long as the resolution
We'd
is
start with our legal counsel or the superintendent first, and then to just be sure it's a lawful warrant.
a lawful warrant, okay. So as long as the resolution follows the law and there's nothing unlawful in there, I'm totally in support of it.
Paul?
So behind the policy that you do have, the equal education opportunity policy, is a whole set of federal laws that are not cited in here. So the district is legally required to follow the guidance of the Office for Civil Rights. And the Office for Civil Rights issues guidelines and they
Dear
call them
friend letter.
dear colleague letters that talk about a school's appropriate response to harassment and bullying. And there's been a lot of that in the last several years, primarily involving special education students and the LGBTQ community. But it equally applies for all of the protected classes. And that's behind what we already have. And so we have systems set up that investigate the district on these kinds of issues and tell us what is harassment and what is bullying, which is kind of another definitional issue for us. So there's more than just our policy that we're following.
Other comments? I guess I'd like to weigh in. It's important to me that we make a fairly bold statement. And I think a resolution can do that. I think that it's important that we not only do the executive limitations, because the executive limitations are written in the negative, so it, you know, to the public, it would look like sort of the reverse of a statement because of the way they're all written. You should not do this. You know, the superintendent will not fail to develop something, blah, blah, blah. Which I think would feel to the public that I heard tonight as sort of not very impactful. The other pieces of what I heard tonight that I would like to know if a resolution is strong enough were, and others have mentioned it, the tools that our educators have and the support that they have to recognize and stand up for students when needed. I think that sometimes when you're in the presence of a comment that really needs to be reacted to, sometimes we're so stunned by that comment that we fail. And I think that then sometimes the next day, after you've had time to think about it, it's okay to come back and say, I failed at this, and that we make sure our teachers feel empowered in that regard. I heard comments about safe places in our buildings that I would hope that we could work with our counseling staff and our building administrators to look for places that give those opportunities for students to feel that they can express themselves. I guess I also would just like to publicly say that the people who stood up tonight, the teachers in particular, students, former students, were very eloquent and passionate, and I think we owe it to them to have a response that feels like we are hearing the problems that segments of our community are feeling. Marty?
Yeah, I wanted to make two comments, and I think I forgot the first one already. Oh yeah, a lot of bullying, I know from personal experience, happens outside of the sight and ears of the adults. And a lot of things go on that I don't think they know about, and kids will not necessarily say anything about, even when their parents encourage them to do so or offer to do so. So I think this would help, but there's still going to be, people will be people and do rude things, and you can't eliminate it. You can try, but you're not going to eliminate it. And two, safe spaces, if I understand them right, and maybe I don't really understand them right, but at one school in our town, it's not a Salem Keizer school, they have a safe space, but white heterosexual males are not welcome. And a safe space needs to be safe for all students, and I don't want one group of students to feel they're not safe just because of their color, just because they're not a minority. You don't know what's going on in their life or what they may need as well.
So could I ask to see if we have consensus on, so just so I hear, it's hard to, we have to all be on the same page. A board policy or a resolution that incorporates a good portion with some revisions of this document into a resolution that would be ready for the board in January. Is that consensus? And do you want to select maybe two members of the board to once we get it in a resolution process or written out, that could work with me on that to bring it forward to you.
So here's why I didn't nod when you said, is there consensus to that? Because for me, I only give consensus to the resolution if there's some action identified someplace else that that will give us the information that says we truly are getting to what this resolution says we want.
And I think, Chris, that's the next statement she was going to say, which is work on executive limitation, where we get our report.
I just wanted to say why I hadn't nodded.
Yeah.
Because I didn't nod when she said, do I have
think
consensus?
she didn't have a total period there. She had a semicolon and was following that as well, I think is where you were going, right?
Yeah, maybe I should have started with that one first, though.
Yeah.
And that's important work.
And I think what I don't quite hear consensus on is that either, the adoption of some sort of an equity lens that layers over it. Do we go through our executive limitations and be sure that we have report outs on the right executive limitations, or all of the above?
I've been suggesting for about 3 meetings now on our equity meetings that we do, as a board, really take a look at the equity lens that the State Department has adopted, basically all the state-level educational agencies have adopted. And I think that's still something that we ought to be working on regardless of this. And because I think it's really important to the way this board makes decisions, and I think it's really important to the way the district makes decisions. So yes, I think we ought to be moving forward on looking at an equity lens and how this district makes decisions in light of equity. And 2, I think that it would end up being very related to some of the sort of teeth that we put in this around our executive limitations policies. And I would be more than happy to help you.
So consensus on, we also need to review our equity or our executive limitations.
Yep.
And consensus on, we at least want to consider, do we adopt some sort of an equity lens? Or
What I was hearing, apply an equity lens to our existing limitations and see how it melds in there. Is that?
Well, what the equity lens does for the state is actually identifies a series of questions that the state agencies ask themselves whenever they're making a decision, to make sure that that decision has a clear, when they make the decision, they have a clear understanding of its effect on all of the various populations.
Okay.
And so it's just basically more a way you make decisions, and it's probably your preface that you were talking about to how the district goes about making decisions.
And I would encourage us, that's a longer term discussion. I don't want to
No.
not put it off. But we have some work sessions that are coming up that still say TBD on what we're going to talk about. I think that should be at the forefront of those early work sessions. The other thing I would encourage, and you're probably going to really give me the evil glare here, Christy, is that in our next strategic plan for next year, that, and I'm looking at the one on the wall there, that it be part of the, supporting student achievement. That's part of the work of supporting student achievement, and how we go about that in our district, given the concerns that our community has brought forward and what we're going to do with regard to perhaps training for our staff on these issues, and protocol training for our building folks on what happens when folks come forward. I'd like to see it in some way, shape, or form also in your strategic plan that you bring forward to us, that it be part of that.
Well, I think we've already started the work. We've had our
Right.
we've begun
Yep.
our equity work.
Yep.
We've begun the work on outcomes and
Yes.
Christie's evaluation. All of that stuff is all tied together, and I see this discussion as part of that.
It's a discussion we were going to get to anyway. It's just, let's
forward.
move it forward. Yeah.
Let's
And
get a statement out that
and
we're
let's
all
get the-
committed to having
yeah.
that discussion, if nothing else.
Yep, and maybe that's part of your resolution, is that commitment to the rest of the work.
Is it appropriate with our public meetings law for there to be any comment, as long as it's something that could be picked up, given to the press if there was comment. But if we would have a better chance of having a clean document if the board, if a draft was made of the resolution and it went to the board and the board was able to say, could you fix this word or fix that word? Or is that a violation of public meetings law?
You can look at it separately. You can all look at the document, and you can send back your comments to
someone
superintendent's-
else.
to the superintendent's office. But when you start doing a board meeting by
Correct.
the internet,
Like I'd see Paul and Chris
No.
and Rick
No.
and
Right.
everybody. That
No,
would-
just
Right.
respond,
Right.
it could go out to us and all,
Yes.
and we could
You'd send
respond
it-
and say,
Right, as long as you don't hit reply all.
correct. I just wonder if that would facilitate the work so that at our January meeting, we
Yeah, the
aren't
goal
going to
would be-
have somebody saying, well, but it says and here, and I think it should say and or whatever, and we're not group editing, because I think that kind of conversation in the boardroom tends to limit the impact of what we're trying to do when we're wordsmithing as a group, when we're trying to make a powerful and definitive statement.
The problem for me with that, though, is like Paul may say something that triggers an idea. Oh, I should have thought of that. And because I haven't seen his response, I'm not getting the value of that aha kind of thing. And that's where we lose a lot if, it's just one person responding to what they see.
We still will have the conversation in the boardroom.
We could
I'm
all-
just
we-
looking for the wordsmithing kinds of things that could happen ahead of time so that we have a little less of that and more substantive conversation.
We also have a work session scheduled for 5 o'clock, so this could be, we could get comment, we could have everyone see the comment in the work session, and we could make some changes on the spot that aren't, if there was any content changes. That would
work
be a
as
way
well.
to do it and get the comments out ahead of time.
Yeah, that would work as well.
One other thought was, as Paul was talking, I think Marty and I have volunteered, I don't know if others are going to volunteer to help you with that resolution, but I think it would be a really good idea for Paul to take a look at whatever we come up with, and
You mean Paul DeCopolos?
that, Paul.
Okay. 'Cause the-
that
both
one.
Pauls.
That's right, we got two
When you
Pauls right
point in that direction, you get all
I got
the
them
calls.
both. No, I'm talking
Anyone
about,
named Paul should look at this.
I'm talking about the lawyer.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That makes sense. Any other comments?
Just be sure you don't have more than 4 board members on your little committee.
Yeah,
No more than 3.
we won't have more than 4.
Yes.
We won't have more than 3 on our law committee.
And I just have a special interest because my son is a person of color, and that's why I want to have input on it.
Cool.
I think with that, do I hear any more comments? I think with that, we're adjourned.